Welcome to IndyScotNews Review of the Week. Today's guests are Denise Finlay, co-host of The Cauldron, Julia Pennell, Communications Officer at the Independence for Scotland Party, who writes This Week in Scotland at isp.scot, and RoddyMacLeod, host of Through a Scottish Prism and author of Barhead Boy blog. Welcome all. I hope you've all landed on both feet in 2022. We're going to start today with unity and division. Some of those preaching unity are the ones creating animosity and bad feeling. There's a lot of discussion about unifying the Yes movement at the moment. Roddy, you in your first blog of the year wrote, "What is desperately needed now is unity of the Yes movement. Sadly, up until now, Nicola has allowed her supporters free rein to attack and demonize other independence parties and the supporters." A question for all of you: what can be done to unite the entire Yes movement?
Well, I did offer some solutions. One of the main one being that we should have an independence constitutional convention encompassing not just only politicians, but also Civic Scotland and the general public, and come to an agreed position on how we should drive forward with the independence cause. Because I think only the most optimistic believes that Section 30 is ever going to be granted by any English Prime Minister. Why would you get rid of the goose that lays a golden egg? So, and as it's not been debated at the SNP conferences, then this is an ideal opportunity to get everyone together and to come up with an idea. Now, I personally, and I made it very clear, I don't believe a referendum is the way forward. However, if an independence constitutional convention of the people I've mentioned there come together and say that's the way forward, then I will get behind it. And I think all of Scotland will get behind whatever that decision may be. Unless, of course, that decision is Devo Max, which I will state here and now, I will never get behind and promote.
Yeah, we'll go on to that a wee bit later. Denise, any thoughts on unity and disunity?
Yeah, I think the disunity is the problem of the SNP leadership. And I don't think we should mince words about it. I don't feel it's my responsibility to make up for what the SNP leadership are doing. They brought in the most divisive policy. And I was having a look at some opinion polls, which I maybe chat more about. But 70% of no voters are against men self-IDing into women's spaces. Now, I thought the SNP were meant to be, going after these no voters, these soft no's. So it's not just a policy that's divided the independence movement, it's a policy that is not going to get these soft no's on board, which is what we've been told now for 7 years, that we are working to get, to persuade the soft no's. So I don't feel that Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP leadership are acting in good faith. It's not only that, it's their attitude to Alex Salmond, which is unforgivable. It is unforgivable what they did to him. And nobody can forgive that. And I certainly can't. And it's not just what they did to Alex Salmond. What they did to Alex Salmond, this is Nicola Sturgeon, the SNP leadership, the stitch up. They did it to Scotland, because what they did it for was to ruin our chance of independence. So they were doing it to Scotland, not just to Alex Salmond. And the fact is, when he was found innocent, that was their chance. When he was found innocent, some SNP MPs like Kenny McCaskill and Joanna Cherry, Kenny McCaskill was SNP at the time, said that he should be admitted back into the SNP. If Nicola Sturgeon had said, we'll have good, that I'm so glad he's innocent, come back to the SNP, well, the movement would be in a very different position today. So there's another incredibly divisive thing that Nicola Sturgeon's done. So I don't see how we get unity while we have a leadership that sows division. Now, it's not just that, it's the abuse that they heap on. They allow the abuse. They allow their members to abuse other members with different views, and also non-members and ALBA supporters. Even their MP, Pete Wishart, spends his time abusing ALBA. So I'm not sure where this unity can come from when we have an SNP leadership with divisive policies who has treated Alex Salmond and by extension Scotland with the way they have, but I'm very kind of angry with them because they've messed up our best chance of independence. We had Brexit. When Brexit happened, there were so many people thinking, this is it, this is our chance for independence. And I can remember on the show, the Brexit result, Alex Salmond was happy because he's like, we're going to get independence now. Yeah. And Angus Robertson was furious because he was like, this is a problem. So they've screwed up our chance. So I don't know how we let that go. I don't know how we say, oh, it's fine.
Denise, we have to let it go if we're going to get unity. We all have to make compromises, as will Nicola Sturgeon. She is going to have to eat a lot of humble pie if we're going to unify. I mean, the hand of friendship was handed out in May. I mean, unity was shown by the ISP and by Solidarity and by AFE when they all stood back in unity with the Alba Party to go forward for the good of Scotland. It was actually Nicola Sturgeon who slapped away that hand of unity. So she has to make concessions. And it was difficult, I'm sure, Julia, I don't want to speak for Julia or her party, but it must have been very difficult for them to have, after all the work they'd put in place, to stand back. But they did it for the good of Scotland. And we are also going to have to accept things that probably are not, I mean, I agree with everything as such as what you've said is nothing unusual there, but we have to get unity, we're all going to have to make compromise, I believe.
Can I just answer this? Because I'm sorry Julia hasn't had a chance, but just let me answer this point. That would only be, I tell you, I would do anything. I would vote for Nicola Sturgeon. I would give money to her campaign. I would clap. I would give her a standing ovation if I thought it would bring independence an inch closer. But I do not think it will. I think enabling Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP leadership by not calling them out for their behaviour is actually the thing that's holding independence back. It's not that we're not being nice enough to Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP leadership. That's not why we've not got independence. We haven't got independence because we sat back and let them take control and take us nowhere. In fact, take us into a total blind alley. So the idea that, by somehow being nice, we will achieve independence and Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP leadership won't just take total advantage of us and go on the way they've been going on for the last 7 years and do it for another 7 years. I don't buy it at all. I don't buy that they'll change.
Yeah, Julia, how difficult was it to drop out of the election you had prepared for back in May? How were there difficult and long discussions in ISP at that time?
Yeah, there were people that were going to be candidates that aren't in the party anymore. It really split us. We didn't want to do it. It was a popular vote. Many of the candidates wanted to go forward, but well, we felt we couldn't. We felt we would have been annihilated, basically, I think.
Yeah. Next topic. Is the National Convention idea taking off as a precursor to Indy? Sturgeon promised one back on the 31st of January 2020, but has not delivered. It's been adopted as part of the Alba Party platform. And this week, we've been surprised by Pringle and Small leaning towards radical thinking. What do you think, Roddy? Is it an idea whose time has come?
Well, I have advocated as such, as you indicated right at the beginning. My first blog this year was also about that. And my last blog in last year, I was talking about an independence constitutional convention. I think it is the way forward. I do. We need unity if we're going to make any progress. And so I'm glad to see others have started joining in. But that's the point I'm making. When that began to happen, when Mike Small came in and Kenny McCaskill and the Times and other commentators, suddenly the SNP Praetorian Guard were let loose to attack and traduce everyone that was promoting this. And I've often written and said, I don't believe in coincidences, particularly in politics. Absolutely don't. But that a member of the SNP policy committee gets a front page spread to talk about Devo Max, something that would be divisive to the Yes movement. I mean, as I've said, I couldn't get behind a devolution. Extra devolution is not for me. I want independence, because devolution just means power retained. So I think the time is right. I cannot see any other way to get the independence movement going. Now, I also believe I have little or no respect for any politicians, and they are ambulance chasers. And if we get this going and the public get it going, I believe the politicians will follow. When they think it's getting traction, they will arrive and they will want to be involved. So I think it's now up to the people to grab it.
Yeah.
And the best way of grabbing it is by getting a constitutional convention going. That's just my opinion. If anyone can come up with a better idea, I'll back it. I don't see any other idea that worth chasing at the moment.
Julia, before the show, we were chatting a wee bit about the National Constitutional Convention idea. What you expressed some opinions. Could you just articulate again?
Well, I do think it's got its difficulties, because we've obviously got differences that we don't agree on, the different parties, the different groups that are involved. It's difficult to see anything else that's going to break the logjam, though, at the moment, because SNP didn't get behind the idea of a plebiscite election. This might twist their arm, as Roddy said. It might be what they need, is to feel that they're losing popular support and that's something they can get behind. Maybe it is the only way to push things forward, because, I mean, it was only when the new party started emerging that they've actually sat up and taken notice at all, and they've not taken much notice at that. They're just ploughing on with their own agenda. But yeah, I think it is something that'll break. It's certainly not this idea of Devo Max. That's just a non-starter. I think that's just going to totally divide the indie movement, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, that moves us on to the next topic, Deja Vu, Devo Max. I don't know if you noticed today, David Pratt wrote about this. There was quite a reaction to yesterday's Scott National front page. David Pratt wrote today, frankly, I'd rather see a plebiscite election before Devo Max on the ballot paper. So people who have been until now quite conservative and supportive of SNP policies have been coming out. Denise, is that a deja vu with Devo Max?
Well, actually, I thought that we already had that. Don't we have the most powerful parliament in the world and the closest thing to federalism?
It was promised.
Yeah, so that's what we've got. I thought they said they delivered. In fact, they did say they delivered. Yeah. But on that subject, I do believe it's flying a kite, and I believe it was done with the full complicity of the leadership. There's no way that Chris Hanlon got the front page of the Scottish National and approving tweets by Kenny Farquharson without that being approved. You notice that neither Angus Robertson, Constitution Secretary, or Nicola Sturgeon has disavowed Devo Max. And interestingly, in November, there was polling done on 2 questions, on a Devo Max question. It was done by YouGov at the end of November. And what it was a 2-question referendum. And the first question was, do you want to see changes to the powers? And that was actually very positive for us, because it was 53% said they did want to see change and 26% said no. And the second question was, if you want change. If the question 1 is change, how would you vote between Devo Max and independence? And Devo Max won, but it didn't win a lot. It won by 4 points. It was 37 to 33. But the fact that they've done polling on it, and the fact that there's a rumour going around Westminster that Devo Max is being chatted about by Nicola Sturgeon's people talking to Johnston's people, and there's some thinking of of Devo Max down in Westminster. Now, to me, it is a kite, it's a red herring, it's a diversion, because I cannot see. Cameron didn't agree to a 3-question referendum because the outcome is going to be two things Westminster doesn't want. It's either Devo Max or or independence. It's not going to be the union, right? As we can see just from this polling. But what they could do is put in a very weak, a very undefined, a very, let's call it Devo Max, Jackie Bird type Devo Max, and get that to win because Sturgeon can backpedal on the independence campaign, and then really deliver nothing, exactly what we have now. And power devolved is power retained. So I can see it as some kind of sneaky political machinations going on at the moment, and that's how I see it. But clearly Alba policy passed the Alba conference, because Alba does have debates on independence, is independence non-negotiable. That's what we're going for. Indisputable. So all Alba is looking at is independence, and to get there by any democratic means.
Do we know who commissioned that poll in November? Denise, did you say?
Sunday Times poll. So we don't know who commissioned those particular questions, but there was another interesting question in that poll. It asked people who they would like to see as SNP leader if Sturgeon was to stand down. Now, most people said they didn't know, or they didn't have an opinion. Right. But of the SNP voters, the winner, surprisingly, was Ian Blackford, followed by Katie Forbes, followed by Humza, followed by narrowly beating into 5th place. In 4th place was Angus Robertson, narrowly beating Alex Salmond was 5th place for next SNP leader. So,
wow. Okay.
No Pete Wishart? I can't believe it.
Yeah, well, actually, that would bring unity. So there's an idea.
On the Devo Max issue, Craig Murray, in one of his first blogs after being released from prison, wrote, Sturgeon has suggested to Johnson he might agree a 3-question referendum after the next Holyrood election with a form of Devo Max as a middle option that would be sure to win. There are many SNP MPs and MSPs who now see Devo Max as a safer option than independence in terms of the potential risk to their own careers from an independence bid.
Yes.
This was dismissed at the time, Roddy, but there seems to be something.
I can smell
there seems to be something in it.
I can smell it from a mile off. Absolutely, and it's no coincidence also that the Sir Keir Starmer, the Knight of the Realm, leader of the Workers' Party, has been, trailing this as well. A new union to keep. I love that, but keep Scotland in the union. They will come up with some super duper federalism. There's 2 or 3 things here. Denise is right. The option's open. If Devo Max, its time has been and gone. But the thing is, if Devo Max wins it, it's a simple step to independence from there. That's a fact. Yeah. So Westminster are not going to tolerate that. It also means giving Scotland full fiscal autonomy. Now, while they'll fiddle and steal some money, they can't rape our money and resources the way they have been. So they lose access to our resources and the money they need to keep England afloat. And that's a fact. And it's something we need to talk about more because we subsidise them. That's just a fact. So they're not going to get rid of why would they agree? It would be beneficial to Scotland. No doubt about it. It would be better than what we've got just now. But it would be detrimental to England. Now, I ask you here or anybody else, do you see the English MPs voting for anything that's going to be detrimental to England, to Scotland's benefit? The answer is no. So it's a nonsense. It's a no-goer. It will not be supported. It won't go. In my opinion, it's to cause division. Now, I'm going to be doing a big debate on this on Sunday. But I believe it's just, as Denise says, a red herring that's been thrown in there to deflect us away from the fact that the SNP are doing nothing, absolutely nothing on independence. I mean, they make grand, bold statements. I talked about it today. One of Nicola Sturgeon's favourite tricks is to stand at conference. I can announce today that every child between primary 1 and primary 7 will be getting a free school dinner by 2022 drop. I can announce today that we will have a not-for-profit energy company so that people of Scotland can benefit. lots of applause, drop it. I can announce that a draft referendum bill will come up and we will have a referendum next year, and it gets dropped. So in my opinion, all this is to deflect from the absolute nothing being done. And it's a nonsense, and it's got to be booted into touch.
Yeah, indeed. Sorry about Julia's really having connection difficulties today,
Nothing
and
worse.
we may just have to let that one go. Crossing the border for the next topic. Petition to rescind Tony Blair's knighthood was nearing 800,000 this morning when I looked about 6 o'clock. Could this have consequences for Labour and or the monarchy, Denise?
Well, the thing about this is, as usual, the Tories are playing a little bit of games and political games. So they're in a lot of trouble because they've been partying non-stop, and they weren't meant to be doing that. And so what they've done is they've thrown this knighthood to Blair because they know it will divide Labour, and it has divided Labour. Of those 800,000 names, there'll be very few Tories. It will be all the left-wing Labour people that will be signing that. So it was just like, it's a nice little diversion. It's like forget about those parties, look over there. And it kind of, it's taken the heat off them. And you can see that a bit in the polls where they've recovered slightly, where, Labour took a lead there, while there was the heat on them over the Downing Street parties. So I feel it's a little bit of political game playing by the Tories, who are absolutely expert at political game playing. I give them that. They are the best. As far as the monarchy, I've been a Republican all my life. I have no interest in the monarchy, and I would just say, rank is but a guinea stamp.
Well, if I could give, I firstly have to do a caveat. Like Denise, I'm a Republican, and so British baubles and titles and all that paraphernalia holds no, whether he gets a knighthood or doesn't get a knighthood, I couldn't care less. I'm more interested in what my cat's getting for lunch tomorrow than whether Tony Blair gets a knighthood or not. It's irrelevant to anything, and it just, to me, makes me more determined to get Scotland to hell out of there and away from this patronage and obscene. I'm giving him, Lady Moan, Sir Tony Blair, Sir Lord Folks, for goodness sake. It's a joke. So no, I don't care. Couldn't care less. Labour are done in Scotland anyway. So what happens to them in England? Again, I don't care, because, without being too crude, as we say, the Tories and the Labour are just two cheeks of the one bum, and they are. So I couldn't care. Is my answer. Is that allowed? To not care?
It's okay here. Keir Starmer was talking about patriotism the other day. He stayed well away from the word nationalism, but to me, he sounded like an English nationalist. What is he trying to out-Tory the Tories on Britishness? Denise?
Oh.
Yeah, and it's really quite interesting because he seems to be going into the same mistake that the Labour made in Scotland when they tried to out-Tory the Tories on unionism. So I don't think he's going to beat the Tories on this patriotic English nationalism, because the Tories have that market sewn up. So he would be better trying to find somewhere else to go with his Labour Party, and it's obviously not to socialism, which is sad.
Yeah. Roddy, what do you make of his careful use of the word patriotism?
A big lie. It was actually imperialism. He was going to keep Scotland and Wales in the Union. You don't keep something if it's a union of equals. It wasn't even, here's what we can do to strengthen the union even. It was all about English nationalism. Denise again's right. That's all it was. And it was, to me, just come across as that. They have blinkers on when it comes to, they want, some live in Scotland, they believe in a free Palestine and a two-state settlement, blah, blah, blah. They believe in a united Ireland, but when it comes to their own country, oh, no, they don't want that. We have to stay England's possession. So, no, all it was more imperialism, and it won't win him any favour in Scotland. And no matter how much Nicola Sturgeon tries to promote her pal, Anna Sarwar, and her wanting to do deals with, she was slapped down. There'll be no deal before the election or after the election with the dreaded SNP. said Starmer, well, Nicola's begging Sarwar at Holyrood election and since to join forces with her. I wish, she's humiliating and embarrassing herself. They are losers. They will remain losers in Scotland.
It was very telling that Nicola Sturgeon announced pre-Holyrood 2021 that she would work with Scottish Labour, but refused to work with another pro-independence party. But the shock of that still hasn't worn off for me personally. Moving on to the next subject, tainted by bias. The Scottish Government consultation on self-ID appears to have been a discussion within a bubble of Scottish Government-funded entities. Denise, were you aware that the consultation was so one-sided?
Well, I am since the Freedom of Information request by Murray Blackthorne Mackenzie, and they do fantastic work, but I didn't really have much doubt it would be. So how it works is the government funds agencies to do their thinking for them, because let's face it, it's Humza and Shirley Ann Somerville, so they do need these agencies. So they fund third sector agencies to come up with policies. These third sector agencies have all been through Stonewall's training. So they have it's not just on gender issues. It isn't just on this issue with the gender ideology that they fund these third sector bodies to do their thinking. And then they ask these bodies to say, we want to do X. What do you think? These bodies are getting their wages paid by the government. So they give the government the answer the government want. Oh, we think your idea is great. So this is what they're in the process of doing at the moment on GRA. They are talking to the organisations that represent the gender ideologues, the people that believe in gender over sex. And they're not talking to the women's groups. But in their manifesto, of course, they said they would be talking to women's groups. So they're breaking a manifesto commitment. The MSP responsible is Shona Robison, very good, my MSP actually, and a good friend of Nicola Sturgeon. But I'm not surprised about it. The government act in completely bad faith throughout this whole thing. They've got an ideology. It's an ideology. It's a religion. They're not going to be swayed by facts. They've decided that they need to pass this, and so they're going to pass it. And so what they need is organisations to rubber stamp it. So what do? They get the organisations and they fund to rubber stamp it. That's how government works today in Scotland.
More and more councils are rejecting the sex survey, but the SNP Green Coalition appear intent on ploughing on regardless. But for how long? How long can they maintain this before they realise this is going to cost them? Because you say they're in it for their careers.
Oh, for sure. Well, until such times as the public are made aware, because the public, in general, us political anoraks, we're well aware of what's going on. The public aren't, and I think when the mums and dads and the gran and grandpas find out about this, then that's when the problem will come. But they've hidden it. I mean, even in their manifesto, I think it was page 37, they talked about GRA reform. Yet it's their first and prime objective. It was the only policy they said that they were going to get through in the first year of this new government is the GRA reform. But it was in page 37. They've only asked people who will agree with them, people who they fund. They don't allow for Women Scotland or anyone else to get in there that would disagree with them. Yet, here's the thing. One of the polls I saw was 80% of Scots who have been asked are opposed to this. And yet, they tell us on the one hand, well, we can't have independence until the polls are showing 60% in favour. So we can't go for independence. But they're willing to go on this thing with 20%, 80% against. So the hypocrisy and the corruption, it's not just the Tories in England that are corrupt. I'm sorry to say that power corrupts and absolute power, absolute
corrupts absolutely.
I've got tongue twisted, exactly. And that's exactly what's happened after all these years in power. They think they can do what the hell they like, and they're corrupt because it's going against what the people of Scotland want. And they won't debate it. Same as she won't debate independence at her conferences or in her NEC, because she won't get the answer she wants. It's like a spoiled child She won't talk to Alexander because she didn't get him jailed, so she's in the huff. She's a spoilt brat. That's how she's behaving, not as a First Minister. So I think it's until we can get the word out there, they will get away with it.
They will go and plough on regardless. Interesting you mentioned page 37, Roddy, because one of the two SNP list MSPs that cost over 1 million votes, that's 500,000 votes each, she stated, one of the Highlands, Emma, her name eludes me.
Emma Roddick.
She suggested that she was voted personally in on and that the SNP were voted in on that platform. Which as you say, it was an obscure policy, hidden. Anyway, moving on. Karen Adam, another MSP, has made the headlines because of a short social media post. On the one hand, it seemed a statement of the obvious, attempting to make clear that abusers were people who walk among us. Did she merit the criticism she got?
Well, personally, I think if you're an MSP, you need to be reasonably good at communication. Yeah. And it's a very emotive subject. And it did hurt some people. There were people quite triggered by it. And I think that's what happened. There was a reaction for people that have been subjected to abuse. And therefore, they were quite hurt by what she said. She said it in a clumsy way that was open to misinterpretation. And if you're an MSP and you're using Twitter to communicate, you really need to think through your Twitter, your tweets, to make sure they can't be open to interpretation and they wouldn't hurt people. So I think that's what happened. But what I don't really understand is she knows that predators and paedophiles can be anyone, but they're mainly men. 99% of sex crimes are committed by men. And therefore, why does she believe in self-ID? It can be any man. We can't tell the difference between a predator and a non-predator. So it seemed very inconsistent in her position on self-ID. So very hypocritical. So I wonder if that's somehow why it was such a garbled tweet, because intellectually she's not coherent. Of course, poor woman, because I've had pylons myself and it's truly awful. Yeah. So I do feel sorry for that. Very sorry for what she went through, because it is terrible when it happens. It feels like almost like a physical attack sometimes. But really, as an MSP, she should know how to communicate a bit clearer. And she should know then that self-ID is a very bad and dangerous idea.
It almost confirms it confirms the criticism that gender critical people are the things people have been saying about the dangers of self-ID.
Trying to say.
And she has actually confirmed it in a roundabout way. Roddy, what did you make of it? She has received a tremendous amount of criticism.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely on point. It does highlight, the very thing that Nicola Sturgeon said is not a valid complaint. That these predators, the groomers, they groom children, they groom family, they groom the parents first. They fly to get access to young children. So this self-identification, I mean, it's a perverse pedophile's dream come true. So they highlighted that. But if you see it, they'll tell you you're a transphobe and a homophobe and a racist and God knows what else. But two things on this. Karen Adams has her tweets protected. And so the only people that can reply to her are people that she approves of. So if she got a lot of abuse, then a lot of it came from people that she's approved of. Certainly I can't reply to her tweets. I can read her tweets, but I can't reply to them. And so I don't know where this came from. And again, I'm a bit cynical because I remember going back to the referendum in 2014. Remember the Susan Calman carry on? Oh, she'd been abused, but they didn't produce a single thing that showed you any of that abuse. And the one I did see went up had a union flags on it, but somehow or other that was Alba. I'm yet to meet anyone in the Alba party that would have union flags on their avatar. And also it had the Dragon of Wales. So I'm sure there was some people who, I mean, the abuse we all get. I mean, I know you get tons of abuse, Denise. I certainly get quite my share. And it's wrong to abuse anyone like that. But she didn't write it well. She didn't, I don't know what she was trying to communicate. She could actually have been doing that for Women Scotland, or for the witches, or the Wheesht for women, because it was an argument against self-ID, if ever I've seen one, and we should have exploited it better.
Yeah, if anything screamed protect women's safe spaces, it was her 2 tweets there. I think what has been happening, by the way, replying, people have been quote tweeting her. You know, you can quote her tweet, even though you can't respond to her, and then you can respond that way. And I think she's had a lot of quote tweet responses. Anyway, time's run out. It's a real pity we lost Julia. Connection problems everywhere today for some odd reason. Looking forward, 2022, any predictions?
My prediction is on the 1st of January 2023, we will not have made any progress whatsoever on an independence referendum.
Okay, so there will be no progress this year.
No, the only hope I have of progress, and it is a dream. A dream is, ABBA, obviously, this is not a dream, this is reality, do really well in the council elections. But SNP do quite badly. And the SNP MSPs get annoyed and they have a leadership challenge against Sturgeon as she goes. But I can't see that happening. And nor can I see any decent leader emerging that's going to beat her. Because, like, who can beat Sturgeon when her husband runs the election?
Yeah, the invisible CEO of the SNP.
Yes. So I'm afraid, you know, I go through these kind of scenarios in my mind, but then I come up, well, hold on a minute. So I don't think we'll make any progress on independence from the SNP side this year, any official progress. But I think Alba will make a lot of progress. We'll get councillors elected, and we'll start really pushing the independence case. And hopefully we'll have that independence convention up and running.
Roddy?
Let me start with a positive. And I predict that Scotland will qualify for the World Cup in Qatar this year. So there we go. That's my positive. My negative is we won't advance the cause of independence greatly this year. However, I do believe that there will be a lot of people disillusioned enough to leave the SNP and to join other political parties, be that the ALBA party or the ISP. And I think elected officials, certain elected officials will have had enough and will make that crossing. And I think that the SNP cannot for much longer hold on to conning the people, because that's what they've been doing and telling lies. It will come back and bite them, and I think this is the year when it will happen.
That was certainly the point made by Ian Lawson in his blog today. A bit pessimistic, but he was hoping, he believes there will be, that Nicola Sturgeon will be gone, not possibly this year, but most likely 2023, because she'll just have run out of roads, you know.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to speak to Ian yet, and I'm glad you brought that up, because he also put in that he'd heard that there's a £9 million bung getting readied for the Scottish anti-independence English-owned media. I want to find the source of that and see if it's true, because if that is, it's just another disgrace.
The bung coming from the Scottish government?
The government. Yeah, coming
the Scottish government.
They gave them 3 million. Yeah, well, they gave them 3 million before. Now apparently they're looking for 9 million. I don't know. I'll have to get hold of the big man and find out his source. But he's never usually wrong with his sources.
More and better headlines. Listen, Roddy, Denise, thank you so much for this quick run through of the stories making the headlines in the first week of 2022. Roddy, what have you got coming up?
Well,
you mentioned a big debate of the weekend.
Yeah, we brought Prism back a week early. We weren't going to have a Prism this week because of just give it another week off. But the Devo Max con job that's been dropped on the independence movement, we thought was worthy of a dissection and an attack. And I am trying to get the author of this to appear on the show to give us his viewpoint and explain to the Scottish people about his desire to get Devo Max on a ballot paper. Whether he accepts or not, find out on Sunday, folks.
Okay, and Roddy, that is on
That's it.
12
That'll
at
go on
12 noon Sunday?
12 noon
Okay,
Sunday.
on YouTube. Yeah, super.
Mhm. Well, and Facebook and LinkedIn and on the respective web pages and blogs of the participants.
Super. Look forward to it. Denise,
Mm.
what's happening in the cauldron at the moment? You gone a wee bit
Oh
quiet?
yeah, well, our cauldron will be a week late coming back, so it won't be back till next Friday. And but meanwhile, I won't be lazing around because I'll be doing leafleting.
Aha. Okay.
So I've got a weekend of leafleting planned.
Okay.
So if you're
Is
in
And
this-
an
Dundee,
NEC meeting. And an NEC meeting, of course.
I don't know.
Okay. Are these preparations for the councils?
Yes, we have an ALBA introduction and we have an ALBA women's leaflet. So we put them out together and it's quite good. The leaflets are good. And hopefully we'll have our council candidates in place soon and be able to start the campaign and see how we do. Exciting.
Super. Okay. Thanks again for today, folks. All the best. We'll talk again
Okay.
soon.
You're more welcome.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.